All right, welcome everyone. Really appreciate you turning out for this. We have been learning a lot over the last 2 days at Immerse here, and what we're seeing is a lot of technology, a lot of application, a lot of advancement, which is really cool. And the thing that we want to talk about today is humans and putting humans in the middle of all of that, as we like to be as humans. We like to be at the center of everything. And so this panel today is really an incredible team. I'm going to turn it over to them in a moment, a few questions to guide the conversation. But we're going to talk about digital humans, how businesses should be thinking about them and leveraging them as a more effective way to connect with your end user. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and have the panel introduce themselves. If I can ask you each to just give a quick introduction, who you are, what you do, what your company does. Each is a founder and CEO, so a really amazing group here. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yael Swerdlow, and I'm the CEO and founder of Maestro Games. We're a social purpose corporation based in LA, and we build resilience technology using the transformative power of music, virtual reality, and gamifying it. Bring players moments of beauty and joy and awe as a way of countering PTSD, moral injury, burnout, and stress.
Well, hi, thank you for having us here. My name is Verónica, and I'm the CEO and founder of Didimo. And we create a technology that allows to create a digital extension of yourself, like a digital self, a 3D character of you, with the whole purpose of creating a new interaction model and a new way on how you will connect the most human way possible.
Hey everyone, my name is Kerry Murphy. I'm the CEO and founder of The Fabricant. We are a digital-only fashion house based out of Amsterdam, and we do digital-only clothing. And I'm proud to be on this panel, and it's mainly about digital humans, but we also need to dress digital humans. We need to put clothing on them, and clothing is a form of self-expression. We already do it in our physical lives, and I also believe that we will be doing it in our virtual lives. And in our virtual lives, we will be having 20 different versions of ourselves, not just one version. So that's why I'm also a true believer that the digital-only fashion industry will become way bigger than the physical fashion industry, which is a $3 trillion industry.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here with you today. My name is Marcin Klimek. I'm CEO at ExplodedView, where we are building camera for the metaverse, empowering the next generation of content creators. And as you guys said, like, we need to have digital humans, we need to dress them, and then we need to show them. So that's our role in that puzzle. We noticed that there is a huge gap in terms of showing your virtual self in existing media. So if you want to create an avatar video on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, that's the place where we come in, and we are helping those guys to create an amazing content. That is going to be also much more different than what we see today, because metaverse is now having any physics and barriers and everything. So it's going to be an exciting future. And yeah, let's start the panel.
So you hear some strong points of view already, which is what we want to dig into. Just to set the ground for a moment, if this advances. Since the beginning of time for humans, we have sought different ways to connect, and we've constantly improved our technology. The interesting thing is, until now, that technology has always been external. We've always been looking at it, and now we're able to participate in it. And we started to see how that progresses from a light representation or maybe an emotion all the way through to an actual representation of yourself. And so it's already come up on the panel. There might be a range of who you are digitally or immersively, and what does that mean? What I'd love to ask the panel to first start is, what do you see in the digital human space or the avatar space that's interesting? What do you want to talk to about that? What's intriguing you today?
Okay, well, we're working with first responders over at Maestro. So we're working with healthcare providers, military, law enforcement, educators, and others on the front lines. And in working with folks that are challenged by PTSD and moral injury and burnout and just, really stressed and leaving the professions and things, what intrigues me about the digital human space, especially this, is that people will be able to show up as their stressed selves, if you will. They'll be able to show up and feel almost psychologically safe, because they're not putting their human self 100%, they're putting their avatar self, right? And so they may feel more comfortable interacting, like in VR, for example, or in a conversation. expressing their level of trauma, their level of despair, things like that. So I see an incredible path for allowing people to be more comfortable expressing difficult emotions through this as the technology gets better and better.
So following on what you were saying, what intrigues me the most is actually, and to provoke a little bit on the audience, is how we can actually build trustworthy relationships. So we are on the real world, and then we create suddenly an extension of us that goes into the virtual world. So what are the key elements that actually make that connection as authentic and as trustworthy as possible? What are going to be the attributes that are going to be transfer from us to our extended identity? And I think that gives a good cue to carry on. How do you present yourself?
No, absolutely. I'm a true believer of the extension of the identity. It's not here to replace it, it's to add value on top of it. And I love this slide, actually, from the emoji to the low-quality avatar to the high-quality avatar. And for me, that is the evolution that we're seeing, the evolution of our digital identities as a communication method. I think it will only be a tool for self-expression and a tool for communication, where we start moving away from something like emails. I hate emails. It's the most terrible tool from the early 2000s. So how can we start evolve that into something that's a little bit more human, more natural, something that is more intuitive, something that we will actually want to use, and to start creating those interactions between people.
It's also like in terms of what's happening right now on the market. It's also fascinating that like with projects like Didimo, we are actually starting to have the extension of ourselves that is capable of traveling into different directions and is using the same shell, let's say. So in that case, the move that we are making from custom characters that we've been playing in the games into having one particular character that we can actually connect with, that's a game changer that is happening right now. And it's actually enabling all the economics around it, because then if we can travel as a particular virtual character through the different worlds in the metaverse, and we can like use it and interact with it, then we of course can start to build that character. And I think that's what's happening right now with the users, that is thinking that, okay, that's mine, and I can start building that character. If it's exactly the same as me, or is it some kind of a different character, but I can do it. And see, I think that's the biggest game changer that's happening on the market right now.
So each one of you has walked a little bit of a fine line. Your avatar self or yourself, it or me, the character. This is a little psychological. Are they different? Are they the same? What do we want?
I think it's a really interesting question. I think that for us to be comfortable sometimes with uncomfortable conversations, we need to distance ourselves. And this would be an amazing tool to be able to do that, where you're able to show up but not feel as threatened, if you will. Again, this is about being able to create a psychologically safe space. In the workplace, for example, where you're more comfortable in, meetings in Zoom or in VR, when you have meetings with folks that you need to talk about difficult conversations, it could be very threatening. And to be able to have your avatar maybe have an extra dose of courage while you be able to create your own could be very, very helpful. Because let's face it, people don't feel safe sometimes broaching subjects. And if they need sometimes to distance themselves from themselves to be able to do that.
So we get a bit of distance. What else?
I can actually add on that, because that's fascinating question for me, as I'm using my avatar myself, like in professional environments. So I'm posting a lot of videos of my bit crazy version on LinkedIn and like these kind of platforms. And yeah, it's absolutely fascinating, because I think it's a mix. Like for me, at least, what I'm seeing and what I'm doing, like with that avatar, is first of all, I still like treat it as myself, and I meet a lot of people here at the conference when they're saying, yeah, I know your avatar. So I sometimes need to show my avatar first, because they know my avatar, they don't know like myself. But I think it's a mix where you actually start with like your like facial expression, like you're creating the avatar based on your face. That's one point. And I was having very similar avatar at the very beginning. So I was the same haircut, the same clothes, and so on. And then I started experimenting and adding different elements. I changed my hair, I made it blue, I changed the clothes, and you are starting to get that freedom of building that character. So I think that there is a starting point, and then you start to play with it, and that's fascinating. That you start evolving that character, and you can do it much more than you are doing yourself. Because like doing my haircut every day, looking that way, I was trying that here. And I was originally planning to be blue here. It didn't happen because it's too much work and it's too hard actually to do it. But with Avatar, it's just one click, and that's all. So yeah, I think it's more like a beginning and then evolution that is happening, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, I love the idea of safety, and I'll use an example for what happened to me. I got myself 3D scanned in 2017. First of all, I had to do it half naked, so that was already quite scary. And then when I received the 3D files and being able to see myself half naked in there, it's again, you're kind of faced by the reality of your flaws, essentially. And then I gave it to my creative director, who's a fashion designer, and she put on female clothing on my body. And my first reaction was like, oh shit, that feels uncomfortable. But it made me kind of thinking about my identity as this extension that, hey, why not? You know, it's still a little bit too scary to come here and sit on a panel with a dress on, but I can definitely do it in my virtual life. That's super easy. So it helps me to get over those barriers, the barriers of the limitations that I've set for myself in my physical life, and start experimenting. So for me, the answer is yes, the avatar is absolutely an extension of yourself. Doesn't mean that you have to like it, but it's something that allows you to at least play around and go out of that comfort zone that we kind of put ourselves in our physical lives.
And if I may add on what everyone was building here, I think it gives you the opportunity of doing things that maybe you're not capable of doing on the real world, like speaking other languages, communicating with people in different parts of the world that you could not physically be there, or it allows you to cross any cultural barrier. And building on what the previous speaker was talking on the previous presentation, it really opens the opportunity to people that might not be able to communicate because they might have a disability. Suddenly they can have a digital representation of themselves that overcomes those limitations. So it just honestly opens a new world of opportunities beyond the fact of just making an extension of us in different visual looks, I would say, right?
Yeah.
I think it could be very useful in diplomacy as well. I think that, being able to build bridges among people that are reluctant to speak in real life, there's a level of distance and a level of comfort that you have if you're going to reach out to someone who is, either state to state, you're declared enemy, but you can cross the borders with these avatars and feel that you're making a gentle foray, if you will, into territory that may be prohibited. So I think that this is an incredible use in the diplomatic world.
I really like the example from Veronica, and I think I saw some videos, for example, from VR chat, where there were people on their wheelchairs, and they've been creating the avatar on their wheelchair, and at some point they've been actually there were questions, why? Like in the metaverse, you don't need to have that. You can walk, no problem. So I think it's also like this evolution where you actually get an understanding that that's freeing me out of the limitations, and there are some. I know that there is I think this Iron Mouse. That's the girl from Asia, and she's sick and she's not able to go out that much, and she's using her VTubing avatar to interact. She got super famous, and she's driving that every day, and that's something that is compensating her disabilities, because she cannot interact directly with people, but she can drive that avatar, and then she has an amazing life that she was always dreaming of. And it's possible because of the technology.
So I'm going to ask a question that might be a little unfair, but I'm hearing safety and security, the ability to be creative and to understand yourself, maybe envisioning and trying things and testing things out. Is this technology evolution, or is this actually human evolution? Are we no longer singular? Are we no longer constrained by our body?
Great question. It's a combination of the two, 100%. It's human evolution with the comfort of a digital human.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is human evolution and also the technological evolution, because building this type of technology, either if you're building the digital human, even if you're building the applications to use them, the garments to trust them, it's just extremely difficult and complex. So that's only possible due to advance on hardware, software, and new algorithms that every day are being developed. So.
Nothing to add. It's both. Absolutely, it's the evolution of the human being and technology.
Yeah, for me, it's of course the combination, but I think it's becoming eye-opening for people when we work with some creators. They first of all they don't get the idea, but then when they are able to go through that creative process of reshaping themselves, because for example in terms of the video creation, that's their main medium. So of course it's hard to experiment with our visual look. For example, when we are humans and we are just meeting in person, but you are doing the virtual interactions and you are recording the videos for your viewers, or you are doing the video calls. You can do anything you want. And so for them, it's actually a much more natural way of communicating to the audience than actually being in a real life. And from that perspective, when they get that creativity at the beginning of the process, they say, oh, okay, I can change that. Oh, I don't need to that. So they start with recreation, but then, wow, they're starting to evolve. And I think that's something that is just releasing the potential that they already had, but they have not been able to put it out. So, yeah.
If I may add, I don't know if that fits the question or not, but I think it's important to reinforce that there's so many companies working on very specific problems to solve within this space, that if we all work together and we all share open standards, then we can start benefiting from each other's development. And then if we go one step further and we make these available to users, then the users could become the future content creators or even create new applications. So I guess there are different layers, right? The layer of those that develop the low-level technology, and then the ones that are on the other extreme that will create content for the use of that technology. So I think the future is really promising in that sense, because it opens completely new opportunities for everyone.
So we're going to hold on content for one moment, but what
Sorry.
we're getting, no, because the conversation has moved naturally, and Marcin, you brought up a couple of points. Businesses now have an opportunity. We've established this is a big territory now. This is a great way for humans to engage in multiple ways. From a business perspective, how are you seeing digital humans used? What's interesting? What are you inspired by right now?
Is it a business model question?
It's not a business model question. How could a company, a game, an industry use this technology to do more of what they want to do? Better connect with their end user?
I can start to answer. And I think what's happening right now and with the technology is that today, if you look at the internet today, we've moved from browsing the websites to having the social networks and interacting in much more human-oriented way. And the technology of virtual humans is actually enabling that extension for businesses as well. So they can finally get some kind of face. They've been, of course, having some mascots, brand mascots that they've been using. And sometimes they're silly, sometimes they're not. But technically, there is an entire trend of virtual influencers as well. So completely recreated and AI-driven characters. And probably that's the future. But as a business, you can start to communicate to your clients and to your or even potential clients in a much more natural way. You can make your brand TikToker, and just if you are selling something to the younger audience, you can just go there and become that TikToker and just drive the traffic to your website, and you control that as well. You may hire someone for driving that person, or you can drive it with AI. But definitely this interaction that is becoming showing up between business and the customers is becoming much more natural, I would say, and also aligned with how internet looks like today.
I'm not working with avatars, so I don't know exactly from our perspective. What most recent thing that I saw, which was really interesting, is the evolution of the chatbot on websites as a customer interaction tool, where you're actually interacting with an avatar rather than because it's kind of a communication tool. And this specific example was of a famous golfer who was presenting kind of this new golf course. And you could actually talk to this avatar. You know, if you would ask it a question, it would answer something back. And it was not pre-recorded stuff. This was proper AI, where the AI actually came out with the reply itself. So that's something that kind of new that I hadn't seen before, and that I can totally see kind of the evolution going to that you know, to give let's say these e-com tools or websites or places where it just feels impersonal, all of a sudden face that you feel like you're actually talking to a real person.
I think it goes a little bit of what I was saying before. It can either be used for content generation, so it can really save a ton of time and costs for populating virtual worlds. So that's kind of like a no-brainer, because that's something that people today need in terms of like games or metaverse or any other immersive application. But I think what is more interesting is to think of what comes next, right? So what are the opening doors? And it can go from chatbots for customer service to all the way of creating new virtual try-on experiences for fashion. So I think we can look about any single industry that we see today could eventually be using digital human technology, because that's what we do in our daily life anyways, right?
I'm kind of wondering about the uses in healthcare, because if you are, again, if you want to be able to talk with your healthcare provider and you're shy about sharing things, you might have your avatar talk about issues that you're uncomfortable with. I know that in therapy, in mental health therapy, the use of avatars is actually a very, very powerful tool. And for that matter, it may be also that on the provider's side, they are more comfortable asking questions and probing by their use of the avatar. So I definitely see this as a potential use in healthcare as well. And our healthcare system is so overwhelmed, and there's such a retention crisis, that this may be able to answer things out of, you know, after hours, things like that, where the doctor can't get back to the patient or something like that.
I can add on that, because pretty much the technology we developed was born from healthcare. So it was actually being used for embodiment. So how do you feel in the body of someone? Within virtual, it was about domestic violence. So you would actually put yourself in the body of the victim, and then you would actually see yourself kind of, what you say in English, mistreating you. Yeah, and that was in order to study the empathy level. How can you help the person that suffers from domestic violence to improve their empathy level? And like that one, many others, we did others that was helping the elderly, for instance, that suffer from depression, that they didn't want to go out from their nursing homes, to do physical rehabilitation within games that were related to their past. So this was done in Portugal. So in Portugal, they drink a lot of wine, and they make their own wine. So people would, you know, the older people would go and they will step on top of grapes in order to create the wine. So we recreated a game that brought those memories back, and using technology like Kinect, or now more advanced motion capture, they would do physical rehabilitation with it, and they would see themselves doing it. And the results were fantastic, because it brought also happy memories to it.
I also see this as an incredible application in the arts, where if somebody wants to paint but they can't, they can do it as an avatar. If somebody wants to play a musical instrument, they can do that. I think this could be a phenomenally courageous tool for the frustrated artists and all of us.
I would add that actually that's really nice use cases, but it's like if you look at the younger audience that is growing with the avatars, and they are having them from like 3 years old or something, it's for them sometimes it's much more natural to interact also as avatar, because they're spending so much time anyway, like in the virtual worlds. So that like we are older, so we actually embodied them at some point in our lives. They are living with it from the very beginning. And for example, for companies and from businesses, like recruitment process is also quite interesting, because then first of all you can like try to validate the candidate also in the ways that are impossible in the real life. So even a very simple example, just let them pick the clothes for the interview. And out of this kind of interaction, you cannot ask your like real life candidate to like pick the clothes and change their clothes like in the interview process. But you can do it with avatar, and it's very natural from that perspective. So you just ask them, and based on the choices, you can actually get some information about their, or even the way they made that choice, right? So if they reviewed all the items, or maybe just picked the first one that was on the left, that's giving also the businesses a lot of information that can be gathered. So it's completely, like that's just an example, but it's like looking at the younger interactions and like this kind of possibilities that are showing up, it's really changing the way the business can actually operate. Even in the recruitment process, that would probably be the last one to be noticed, but it's a thing, and there are projects that are working on this kind of solution.
So the data that comes out of that, where would that go?
That's a good question. Of course, you know, it's our responsibility to like move it properly, I would say, and we should all be. And we had a lot of discussions with Verónica before about in general, the responsibility of companies that are building those technologies to also, you know, shape the proper standards, do the research, like scientific research. I'm like we even as a small startup, we are doing the research with the university, but I'm not seeing that many people like trying to understand the problem deeply. They are throwing ideas and like trying to make money on it, but it's not a responsibility. It's making money. So I think it's on the companies to actually properly prepare. And it's amazing that Verónica is also having the scientific background, because that's the thinking that you need to apply here.
So taking your recruitment thing a little further. So say somebody is wanting to apply for a job, and they're using the avatar recruitment scenario that you laid out, and they decide to dress a certain way for this interview with Fabricant. And then they show up in this interview, and they don't get the job because the data that came from all their choices was analyzed and showed that they would be maybe unstable in a stressful situation or something like that. Is that possible?
That's a good question. You know, it's the problem that I think already exists. It's just getting to the next level, because you still, if you have I was doing tons of interviews in the past, and you still validate the person, how they,
on appearance,
like how they
100%.
put their clothes, right? So it's existing problem. It's not a new problem. It's getting to the next level with the technology. Of course, you know, that's a good question. If the algorithm actually that was making that decision, or person that was making that decision, was right or wrong. But on the other hand, if it was right, then do you want to have an unhappy employee? Usually not. So if it's right, then that's a good thing, right? Because you are not wasting time of that person working for your company that is not a good fit.
So when everybody's talking about diversity, ethnicity, and inclusion, which is what everyone's talking about now, how would the avatar be utilized for that?
So something you said at the very beginning, Yael, I think is really interesting. First, where does that data go? Who has access to it? If this is my identity, there is an opportunity that I might be able to test and learn an interview, learn how to interact with someone that I don't know, or a culture that I don't know, and learn how to navigate that more effectively and feel confident and be able to do that more effectively. So there's certainly a good potential outcome on that, provided the user is in control of who they are and their identity. As you raise, there's also a challenge on the backside of that, depending upon where that data goes and who uses that and how that happens. But I think there's an interesting opportunity to educate, to help people do more of what they want to do and be successful in doing that too.
I remember that even like right now, like comparing that to existing situation, I remember some big corporations, they are even doing the reviews of your social profiles before they are hiring you. So they can go through your Facebook account, your Instagram account, see what you are posting. So it's already happening. Of course, you know, it's there like a lot of people that are not aware, but I know people that they actually declined from the role because of some kind of political preference.
Yeah, colleges and universities are doing this all the time.
So I'm going to bring us around a little bit and open this up because we've identified this is important and how you present yourself is key to that. Web3 promises a creator economy where everyone can add value, anyone can bring something to it, it's not owned and gated. What happens to content creation now? What does a digital human empower people to do, and what will we see?
I think it's a huge opportunity, right? Because it opens a completely new economy around it. So pretty much you can create your own self, and and then you can allow, as I said before, the users create their own content and even their own applications, and then store it and build your identity that can travel, you know, around different systems if the systems are compatible. And the systems you want to embed your identity will be open to it in terms of standards, of course. So pretty much the summary for me is users of the future, content creators will become.
I would add that there are like different levels of content creation as well. Like you may create clothes, and that's one thing. Then you might create some kind of like videos out of that, like in our case. But I think it's like the economy is already growing huge, like in games, for example, and it's going to be even bigger. Like with this embodiment of the avatars and them traveling between worlds is going to be huge, because right now it's limited to the silos in each game. And I think it's also going to be much easier to even pay for that, because if you buy the clothes that you can use in 1,000 games, then buying the clothes that you can buy in one game, that's like different deal, like economically. But also like from the content creation perspective, it's also like for businesses it's very interesting, because they can start to also like build the digital products that are designed for digital worlds only. Like that's happening with fashion. I think fashion is a frontier on that market, but even like think about cars. Like some kind of brand can create a car that is for metaverse or for digital games, or even like entering that market, they can, instead of like, they can replace the process where you want to get like, that was actually the case that we've been validating. If you want to promote the car, right now you need to like send it to someone, like ship it, or ask them to pick it up, then drive it, like review it and so on. In the digital world, when you're avatar, you can get a 3D model of that car that already exists, and the costs are like fraction of that. That's one thing. Another thing is that it's also, like I was attending the content creation panel, I think on the first day, and it's also eye-opening that it's making accessibility much higher, because if you want to become a car reviewer and you are a poor child in Africa, you do not have access to these kind of items, and you cannot review like German cars. But if you like have 3D model access that you can just download and just sit in that car, wow, you can become the kind of person that you want, and it's much cheaper. You don't need to pay for like shipping the car or have some kind of relationship with the car manufacturer. So it's like huge.
I love let's say the analogy with the smartphone, because smartphone made everybody a photographer and a videographer, and all the economies that we saw coming from that, all the tech, all the platforms that really just allowed people to start creating new revenue streams for themselves. Like the whole influencer economy comes because of that tool, and then platforms like Instagram, TikTok, all the social media platforms. And this is essentially what the avatar economy will create as well. There's a lot of talk about the DTA economy, direct to avatar economy. So when we all have like our avatars, that these new economies are start going to flourishing. And I'll use fashion as an example, because this is what we're doing. We've built a tool which we call a co-creation tool, essentially allowing people to create their own fashion items. something that most of us don't know how to do. I don't know how to create my own clothing. I don't know how to stitch. I don't know how to cut patterns. But all of a sudden, I have this tool where I get to create my own digital fashion items, which becomes a form of self-expression for myself. For me, digital fashion is just a tool for self-expression. It's not covering your body. It's not keeping yourself warm. But what is it really focused on? It's focused on identity. And a lot of these industries, the creator economy is a lot about creativity and identity. So for fashion, that's going to be massive. I don't know how to really predict it for the avatar, because I was having this discussion right before this panel. What is the business model for the avatar economy? How will we enable for us to have avatars? Are we going to pay for avatars? And then for creators, how will the creators scale those business models for themselves to allow for those new revenue streams? That's the big opportunity, but there's a big challenge as well, which I don't really understand. I know it for fashion, but I don't know it so much for avatars.
I would add that another opportunity is that up until now, we had big silos in each industry. So you would have like the game industry, and then the fashion industry, and then social, and then the working spaces. And now what is happening is they're all kind of like interlinking. So if we look, for instance, at Fortnite, right? So we're starting to see that the game industry is mixing with the fashion industry and social platforms. And I don't have an answer also either in terms of which is the right business model, because it will really depend the problem that we're solving. And I think we're still very much in a discovery mode. We know that we solve a problem for content generation, which is very obvious. But then the rest is just, I think it's just putting the technology out there and allowing the math users to tell us and help us understand what are the new opportunities and new problems that we're bringing. Right? And when we talk about the new generations, they want to have their avatars with the new Gucci, Balenciaga, and the Fabricant garments onto it. Something that I would have never thought about it years ago when I was playing, Super Mario on my Nintendo. So, right? So I think we gotta see this evolution of building new markets and new opportunities, because the industries are fortunately now mixing together, I guess.
I kind of like the idea that you brought up about being able to experience things that you wouldn't necessarily buy, whether you can afford them or not. Because as consciousness rises on like the cost of clothes, for example, right? The climate cost of consumption, but people still want and people still desire. So this is an actually fantastic way to be able to satisfy the want and the desire without the negative impact. So I think that could be a really, really interesting use of this, where if my avatar is going to, decide that they want to just like share or something and put on, this amazing leather dress, but they don't want to go out and spend the money on, but they're vegan, but they want to know what it's like to wear this leather dress. They can go ahead and they can do that in an avatar and not have any sort of negative impact on the world.
I'm going to ask one quick last question. If what we're talking about is a future that is digital human for all of us, and a company or a team is trying to start, what advice would you give them? How should they start today?
Don't lose your humanity.
Be true to your values, I guess.
Know the technology behind it, because it's very, very hard.
And I would say that start using it, actually, right now. That was the biggest eye-opening for me. Start using it, become avatar, do the content, and see what happens.
Very good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.